Let's talk about free speech here. A study by Ipsos has found that Britons feel unable to speak freely on those crucial issues like race, immigration and religion due to a rising hate crime laws and self-censorship. Critics warn that Labour's policies, including this curious Islamophobia definition, but they seem absolutely hooked on, it risks silencing legitimate debate and eroding British values. Let's speak to the Associate Director at the Academy of Ideas, Alastair Donald. Alastair, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, it's quite sad, isn't it, really? Because I was... my son asked me last night, he's 11, we were watching The Simpsons, and in this particular episode, Homer ends up in Cuba. And he asked me what communism was. And I said, well, we're a democracy. And, you know, a communism is something where, you know, the state, the government are, you know, much more powerful, not in a good way, you know. And I mentioned, you know, free speech. And as I said it, I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Because I don't think I felt as convinced by that statement as I might have done a few years ago.
I think you're not alone, probably, in that. I think increasingly people are worried about the state of free speech in this country. It's been building for some time now. And I think there's reports and research that are coming out just now, and also a whole raft of bills that have been going through Parliament in recent months, and before, to be fair, under the Conservative government, that have led us to have grave doubts as to how we can protect free speech anymore. And this Ipsos report that you mentioned is just the latest report to show people's concerns. And it's quite interesting because it shows differences in terms of different demographics and how they perceive the problem or not perceive the problem, as the case may be. It definitely shows that people who are older, who are more likely to be white, male, they seem to be the most concerned, and it draws a comparison with those people being also the most likely to want to speak out on these controversial topics. So that is a worry, because if the very people who have opinions and views and want to speak on them feel the most under threat from expressing those views, then we don't have free speech.
49% of Brits on this Ipsos survey, it seems, Alastair, believe that people are too easily offended, especially regarding race, religion and immigration issues. So there's a lot of self-censoring happening, you know, putting the handbrake on, even just by raising the issue, I think. Not that you're about to say something horrendous about another race, just by engaging or initiating a discussion on it, there is that sense of, oh my God, am I allowed to go here anymore? I mean, that's not what our forefathers envisaged.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't know if you remember the case, 2-3 months ago, of Julian Fawkes, who was the retired special commissioner constable in Kent.
Yes, yeah.
Tweeted about as a response to a pro-Palestinian point of view, and before he knew it, he had the police on the door in his house, actually having a rake around and commenting on the fact that he was a Brexiteer and that he read the Spectator magazine, I think, if I remember rightly.
Yes, that's right, that bastion of right-wing filth, the Spectator.
Absolutely, 200 years.
Indeed, of good journalism, all down the drain by one copper.
He was in his early 70s, and probably indicative of some of the types of people this research is pointed to as feeling under threat. And of course, if he's held up as an example of a problem, then why wouldn't people in a similar position to him?
And if I remember rightly, Alastair, his tweet actually was the opposite to what they thought it was. So it wasn't even accurate that they'd gone in there and thought this guy was some kind of anti-Semite who was saying something about piling into the country or something at Heathrow or whatever it was. When in fact he was sort of trying to, in a funny way, make the very opposite point. So that shows you how bad it is, that, you know, you've only got to say a certain set of words and another group of people will decide what they think it means without even bothering to really thoroughly check it.
Yes, I think that's right. And in many ways, as much as the problem is an institutional one of the police being willing to take that step into this guy's house and to argue the toss over what he chooses to express on Twitter, perhaps even the more disturbing thing is that it leaves people not knowing where they stand in terms of that they want to express. So things can seem very arbitrary. You don't quite know, when are you overstepping the boundary? When are you within the boundary? I mean, I believe anyway that there shouldn't be any boundaries in these things. But the very introduction of these restrictions leaves people, I think, worried as to what it is that they're going to express. There was also, just as an example, another example of how arbitrary this can be, the case of Brian Leach a few years ago, who was the guy up in Yorkshire who worked for Asda, who put on Facebook a Billy Connolly clip that ripped into Christianity and Islam, and he found himself sacked from work. So these are, you can quite understand why the results of this Ipsos survey are exactly as they are.
Indeed, and the one that forever haunts me, and we can look at the ones that are just so ridiculous they're almost funny, although they're not really funny, but you take my point. But then the Batley school teacher, which was so horrendous that not only did this, this guy who now lives under a different name, having to move his entire family. But here you had a guy that showed a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad. You had these group of people outside the school calling for him to be fired and jailed, and I'm sure there were some who wanted him killed. Very incandescent parents. A copper should have been stood there on a big loud hailer on top of a police van saying, right, all of you lot, if you don't get out, we're going to water cannon you, and if you say any more of that, we're going to put you in jail, because this teacher's done nothing wrong. But it went the other way. So any teacher now is terrified because, wow, what might happen if the braying masses come out?
Yeah, I mean, this survey that Ipsos has done was published for the Commission for Countering Extremism. And you wonder which extremism is being countered, because it seems very one-sided. That teacher, 4 years later, is still in hiding. He's still not been seen. So it's certainly not countering the type of extremist behaviour that forces him into hiding. So there's a very partisan, one-sided view to the free speech issue, which suggests that it's okay for those that hold the correct views, as defined by endless bits of government legislation and policy, but not okay for those that want to challenge these issues, and that's a real problem.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we'll watch with interest. This debate certainly isn't going away. Alastair, great to have you on. Thank you for that. Alastair Donald, who is the Associate Director at the Academy of Ideas.